And so the 2018 web conference is around the YLT world in 24 hours. And this year's conference is kindly sponsored by National Geographic Learning. So don't miss the NGL talk, which is bringing the world to the young learner and teen classroom at 1800 hours GMT. I'm Jen Dobson. I'm the social media and tech coordinator from the IATEFL Materials Writing SIG committee, and I'm delighted to be supporting one of our sister SIGs, the YLTs one, by hosting the speakers showcasing the Middle East and North Africa region now. So I'm delighted to introduce Mari Delaney, and she's representing Iraq. And Mari is an educational psychotherapist, teacher, trainer, and author. Her main interests are the effects of trauma on behaviour and learning, dealing with challenging behaviour, and promoting well-being in education. Her publications include Teaching the Unteachable, and she is co-author of the British Council Language for Resilience report. So, take it away, Mari.
Hi, thanks, Jen. So, hello, everybody. As Jen said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. I'm actually, at the moment, it's 8:26 in Ireland, where I'm based. But I'm going to be talking about a project that I worked on with the British Council and Mercy Corps in Iraq. What we were interested in was looking at how language learning can bring different communities together with a common goal. So I'm going to describe the project a little bit, and also then at the end suggest any transferable things that I think we can learn from this for other, perhaps more formal education contexts for teaching young people. So this project was called Language for Resilience. It was a joint partnership, as I said, between the British Council and Mercy Corps, who are an INGO working in various places, but this was based in Iraq. They bring students together from the ages of 12 to 17 to learn life skills in a safe space and in a community setting, particularly vulnerable students. The Language for Resilience programme, which was developed by the British Council, I'll talk about a little bit in the next slide. But the aim of this particular project was to look at how we could integrate English into the life skills programme that Mercy Corps were already running. They run courses for the young people in various things to help them with their life skills, to build their resilience, and as they would say, to empower them. And they have been running English classes alongside this, but they wanted to integrate the language programs into the other skills. And also the idea was that learning a language together would act as a vehicle for bringing together the different groups that were in that area, which were specifically Syrian refugees, IDPs from other... Oh, sorry, my phone is talking to me. So yes, Syrian refugees, internally displaced Iraqis, and host communities. This was the first time around this course in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. So we had students from Syria, Iraq, and Kurdistan region of Iraq. But at the same time, we wanted to train mentors for Mercy Corps to build some capacity to keep this program going. One of the issues was that all the participants that we were training and working with were inexperienced as English teachers or coaches. So this was where we ran the first program. It was in the Shawas area of Erbil, in the Kurdistan region of Iraq. I wanted to show you this photo because it gives you an idea of where the community centre was, in a fairly disadvantaged area of the city, so that the students that we were getting from the host community were also, because of disadvantaged and fairly vulnerable, a certain mixture there of city and country with cows being herded somewhere. I never was quite sure where, but that'll give you a flavour of where we were. So the format of the training, we ran this program actually 3 times in 10-day and 6-day versions. The reason we ran it 3 times was the first one was a pilot program in Erbil, which was the 10 days. We were going to run it again, but due to situations to the referendum political situation, tensions worsened a bit, and we did it as a remote version. And we recently completed a version in Jordan, which brought together coaches and mentors from Iraq and from Jordan. It was roughly based on the kind of CELTA model of methodology input in the morning, teaching practice in the afternoon with feedback. As I said, the aim was to really maximize the learning and skills development in a very short time frame. One of the things that we had to think about was how to empower this group of people in a short time, to get good results as well with the participants. So we had trainers. We had 2 trainers, myself and Fiona Robertson, who is actually joining us today, so that's great. She might be able to also answer questions. And mentors from Mercy Corps, who would be trainers in training. These were trainers who were quite experienced in mentoring, but not particularly in English language teaching. So they were shadowing the course. They also taught some lessons. That was an important part of it, that they taught alongside the participants, delivered some training, observations, and gave feedback. So some people might say, why was it English language teaching? Because actually we call it language for resilience. In fact, when we did the language for resilience research, the British Council, we were looking at how language skills can enhance resilience of refugees or displaced people. But interestingly enough, in the region we were in, the young people were asking for English. They saw it as very important for their future prospects, indeed for many of them for their survival, or for even if they're moving on further, or if they're going to stay in their own region or go back to the areas of Iraq where they're from. But also the difficulty that Mercy Corps sometimes had was that their life skills programs needed to be separated into Kurdish and Arabic speakers. So the young people were in the same community centre, but they actually were in different groups because sometimes they didn't understand each other, sometimes even the Syrian Kurds had difficulties understanding the Iraqi Kurds, different dialects. Sometimes the communities didn't want to be together, so that was also a bit of an issue. But also, the programs were very short, either 8 or 12 weeks, and obviously there was only a certain amount of English that they were going to learn in that time. So one of the main focuses of this program was how to encourage these young people to believe that they could be learners and that they could go and learn something like English or anything they wanted, particularly something they perceived as difficult. Comment we often heard at the beginning from them was, I want to learn English but I'm rubbish at it, or it's not for me, or I've tried and I couldn't do it, I'm not clever enough. Partly that was because many of them had been out of school due to being refugees for maybe 2 or 3 years, even some of them. Even the local Kurds were often not in school, or attendance at school was poor, they weren't succeeding at school. So when we talk about developing life skills, a key aspect of that development was to help the young people feel more confident, increase their self-esteem, and really begin to think that they could be, as I said, a learner. So before I say... Okay, so as I was talking about, we wanted to look quite at what a definition of resilience is. In the Regional Refugee and Resilience Plan from UNHCR, they define it as the ability to anticipate, withstand, recover, and transform from shocks and crises. Which, essentially is this idea that people and communities can live through crises and come back from them. So that's one thing we were looking at in terms of what we were helping these young people to develop. But also we looked at the individual model of resilience, which some of you may know Seligman talks about, the importance of having positive emotions, being engaged, having good relationships, meaningful engagement and achievement. And that's also something that we wanted the young people to get from the learning that they were doing with us. And just briefly to just explain the language resilience research, that was a report that Tony Capsick and I did for the British Council across the MENA region, well, the Middle East region, on ways that language could enhance the resilience of Syrian refugees. And these are the 5 themes. Resilience can be enhanced if home language literacy is developed. Language learning can provide access to education, training, and development. It can bring people together for social cohesion, because language learning activities can be a basis for developing, as I said, this individual resilience and life skills. Also, we were looking at ways it could address the effects of trauma on learning, how language programs could support learners that had been through trauma and displacement, and also how building the capacity of teachers within educational systems, particularly around language, built institutional resilience. So the 2 areas we were particularly interested in on this program was how the language learning could help these young people access education, training and employment, or begin to prepare them for it. But also number 3 in particular, how it could develop that idea of social cohesion, bringing different communities together. And actually, if you're teaching in a communicative, interactive way, your language classroom, whatever language you were teaching, will automatically provide opportunities to bring people together. So, for example, we often use communicative language activities where you work with somebody, where you cooperate with somebody, and you have reason to speak to them. If a language classroom is interactive and student-centered, if the ideas can come from the student, if the students are talking about something real and meaningful, if they are, as I say, interacting with each other and are curious about each other. We also include a lot of empathy building activities, which very simply can be things like guess things about your partner. Were you right or wrong? Find things you've got in common. Imagine some answers for another group would give to some questions. And a very important part of that is inclusive practice, where we look at trying to understand what we have that is similar, but also celebrate what is different. So, very basic language learning activities, such as work with a partner and find 5 things that are the same and 5 things that are different. We also wanted to look at the idea of how the language classroom created a safe place for students that had been through traumatic events. This is a big focus of the Mercy Corps work. They are trained in understanding the effects of trauma on the brain, on behaviour, particularly maybe when trying to learn, and attitudes. So we try to put together the work they've done, and particularly the work they've done on the brain hormones. What happens in your brain when you get too stressed? That's, you have a lot of cortisol in your brain, and what kind of activities increase cortisol, what happens when students are overstressed and lots of cortisol and fight or flight in their bodies. For example, dopamine is the hormone that we generate when we're working towards goals, and it's also related to, therefore, sometimes risk taking to achieve those goals. Dopamine is created in your brain when you achieve something that you've found that was quite difficult to achieve, that was a challenge. Oxytocin, sometimes called the cuddle hormone, is what is created when we develop relationships, when we reach out to people. So what we were looking at is how you could put together a language program that used the sort of communicative activities that we often use in the classroom with young people, but also link that to what we know about the brain and what could be happening for young people that had been through trauma or were vulnerable. So on a very practical level, one of the things would be the importance of building trust and relationships. So the whole week, the whole 2 weeks of the courses was about, as I say, looking at activities that build trust, that allow students to talk about themselves, to find out about each other, and to work together. Using a variety of activities, it's important to think about the risk involved in activities here. I've written here continuum of risk taking. By that I mean some activities are fairly low risk. You might, students can say if they like not to drink tea or coffee or football or basketball, those kind of lower risk activities. The creative activities where with using drama, art and stories, they maybe began to talk about some of the things that were meaningful to them if they wanted. I mean, one very popular activity is doing a name poster where you put your name in the middle and you just draw things that you want people to know about yourself around that name. And that can be low or high risk depending on what students choose to share. So the other thing we discussed with the trainers and the coaches was that how much you challenge the students in this environment so that they could successfully take those risks and overcome those manageable challenges. And as I said, which increases particularly dopamine and oxytocin in the brain and has a positive effect on learning as well. And we had quite a discussion with the Mercy Corps course coaches about what they saw as a shocked look on students' faces when the coaches talked to them mostly in English. Mercy Corps would be very concerned about keeping it safe and not re-traumatizing the students. Whereas from my point of view, the shocked look was actually a very typical surprise look by students who hadn't had the experience of a teacher who could try to speak English to them, give instructions in English, and who thought they could understand enough English to do what was required. When we pushed through the shocked look, what everyone noticed on the second day was that the young people were very comfortable with this idea of having everything in English and actually wanted it. So I think it was important to have those discussions with people from another discipline, from another area of work, to understand exactly what was happening with the young people and not assume that we knew what was happening. Okay, a key part of the training, as I said, was how to deal with a situation where conflict and changes in politics and the political situation meant that we couldn't always deliver it face to face. So we've also delivered this program through Skype with an international trainer and a local facilitator. And we had a follow-up with University of Reading volunteer mentors, which we call Colleagues Across Borders, which supported the work. Okay, I'm aware of time, so I just wanted to move on to what I think were the transferable lessons learned, because this is a very specific content. It was non-formal education. It was young learners, because obviously there were young people we were dealing with. But I did feel that there were lessons learned from this this language for religion project that might be useful in more formal contexts where maybe other people are working. Lots of the activities that we used were at low level English classes. Most of the students had a level of A1 to 3 level of English, and what we found is by allowing them to try and say meaningful things, by using in particular drawing and art, and for them to express what they wanted, and then giving them the English words, we could actually use very meaningful activities. It was vital to create information gaps where students had to talk to each other. You know, as I said, guess about your partner, were you right? What you know, working together, using pair and crew, and persevering with different groupings, because sometimes the young people were not keen to work together with someone from another background. Sometimes they were a bit silly when they had to because they felt embarrassed or uncomfortable. And obviously you have to be sensitive to that. But on the other hand, we wanted to persevere with something that was different for them and give them this shared experience. We use a lot of art, drama and music to express feelings and life experience. I'm sure many of you use the kind of activity where you play music and students draw something that it makes them think of, and then they go and put the words to it, or they try to act out something based on it. Authentic materials were very important, even though the students were a low level of English, because, you know, this Mercy Skill work a lot on life skills, which involves empowering young people, giving them responsibility and helping them to be part of their community. As part of that, get them thinking about values, education in general. So we use things such as there's videos of the Paralympics, which has the motto, "Yes, we can." There's a nice video of a song by Pink around this as well, which was developed by UNICEF. Many of these materials are on the British Council Learn English Teen site. But what we wanted to teach the coaches to do is to use that kind of material and grade the task so that students could do it. Obviously, it was a challenge and it took some time, but we wanted to get them away from what they were doing, which was lessons which were like, now we're going to do food, now we're going to do animals, now we're going to do numbers, which were very disjointed and not particularly meaningful for young people, particularly young people who felt a bit demotivated maybe already about learning. We can't overemphasize the importance of having fun and play. Many of these young people have not had the chance to play. They've had to grow up very fast. And so games, fun, laughing, playing in class was very important. Learning from each other and not avoiding the differences that we may have. As I said, we did quite a lot of activities about what we share and what's in common, but we also celebrate the idea that we're different and let's find out about each other, and isn't that great? Learning can be a safe refuge for these young people, when you know structure, when things are consistent, when you have safe, trusting relationships. But it's also important to remember that thinking can feel dangerous. So points when people had to reflect or when they had to sit too still for too long, when your brain is full of maybe dangerous memories or is on high alert for danger because of what you've been through, sitting quietly and having to think can feel very dangerous. So initially, again, low risk activities are where you maybe just do things, practical things, move, or the task is safe. We definitely thought the training model needed to be practicing what you preach. So when we were training the trainers, they needed to teach as well and have feedback. The understanding of neuroscience and the brain, I think, helped a lot with people's planning their lessons and understanding why we were doing things. We developed value-based contracts and community agreements, which are things like, in this class, we help each other. In this class, we give people time. In this class, we understand. We try to understand everybody's point of view. I think also a valuable lesson for us was that partnerships from the formal and non-formal sectors of education can be very enriching and beneficial. Okay, I am aware of the time, so I just wanted to say that when you do this sort of trainer training, if any of you are involved in it, many of the people you're training have also lived through loss and displacement. The coaches were also from the same communities as the students, which made that reflection can sometimes be difficult. It can be even dangerous, and doing things are safer and more manageable. But we did notice that as the course progressed, the trainers in training were better able to reflect and comment. And metaphor, asking people to comment in metaphor works better, more directly than commenting directly. By that I mean, what's that like? What's that like for you? Draw, think about what you got from this course, draw it, show it as a visual. All that kind of thing is a lot safer for people who have themselves been through very traumatic times. Okay, so I finally thought I'd finish with some comments from participants to give you another flavour of what happened during this course. I thought this was very interesting. The trainers and the coaches that we were training became very close themselves. They were a good example of how social cohesion, how the program brought people together. So somebody was saying it's like my second family. Someone else who had done a lot of courses as a trainer very honestly said, I thought I knew it all, but I actually didn't. And I think by that he meant he had assumed that English language training was different to any other sort of training. In fact, in the beginning, a lot of the trained teachers used to teach in a very traditional, upfront, teacher-directed way, even though they were life skills facilitators in the other part of the program, which is quite interesting. Somehow they taught the way they had been taught. They certainly didn't believe it was possible to teach beginners without using a lot of Arabic. And as I said, they also thought that it would be too traumatic for the learners, when in fact it wasn't. It was quite the opposite. It was quite motivating and I think empowering for the learners. They had thought that language programs needed to be a separate subcomponent of what they did, and by using the kind of interactive activities that we did, and by using the same values-based contract in class that they were using in their other programs, they realized that they could integrate English, and that also that just because the students were a low level of English didn't mean they couldn't be given the vocabulary at a higher level to discuss the things they wanted to talk about. And the interesting about the children that were taught on as part of the teaching practice is they kept bringing their friends, particularly the boys who had more freedom. And that's one of the issues we had. Every afternoon we just had more and more students piling into the classes, wanting to be part of the fun and what was happening. So I think something very important was happening for them based around some of the points I've made. Okay, so I am aware we've overrun a little bit because we had some technical issues, but I'm going to finish there in case anybody has any immediate questions. If I've got time for any. I see that Phil has been telling people about the Future Learn course on teaching migrants, which started last week, which Tony Capsic and I wrote based on this kind of work. You can still actually join that course if you want. You just catch up. Well, as I said, I think it is probably time to finish there. If anyone has got any comments or questions, please put them in the chat box.
Thank you so much, Mose. It was absolutely fascinating. I'm sure everybody will. And to remind you that it's being recorded as well, so we'll be able to see it again and share with other people. And that will be on all the social media.
Yeah, and just to say, people keep an eye on the British Council Teaching English website. There's a publication coming out about inclusion, where Fiona Robertson has written up more about this project as one of the chapters.
Brilliant. Yeah. Well, as I said, I mean,
I don't
we're so
think any
lucky to
questions
have
though.
these speakers. Sorry? Any quick questions for?
No, so I'm just saying, I
Sarah,
think there doesn't get any questions. People are commenting, so yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think everyone is like, wow, a lot to think about there. It's for people who are involved in this kind of work, you know. Yeah, it's fantastic. So thank you. So
Okay, well, if anyone has got any other comments, they can contact me through my website, which was on the first slide anyway. Just learningharbour.ie. I'll just put that back there, just if anyone.
got that there. Okay. Okay, so we're going to have Nick up in a minute. We're going to take a 5-minute break. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks then. Bye.
Bye.